Hello, reading buoy block. Thank you so much for letting me do this online. Hopefully this is helpful for all of you who aren't feeling well and still want to make sure we're prepared for when we get back to buoy after spring break. What we're going to do today is talk about the early literacy assessment and what you'll do with a kindergarten student on that Monday that we come back from spring break at buoy. I'm going to give you the assignment requirements. We're going to look at the assessment packet, and I'm just going to remind you of a couple of the things that will need to be done on that day and that you'll need to be prepared for. Feel free to ask questions as you are looking through this. You can email me or text me. I'm not going out of town for the week. So if you need something, you can certainly let me know and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Just to let you know, we had 75% of you say that you wanted to do an online class and 25% of you said face-to-face. I apologize to those of you who wanted to meet face-to-face. I think we could have, but I was a little concerned about the 4 of you that were down yesterday and the potential for more. I'm not necessarily concerned about something like coronavirus, but I think we're all a little tired. I think it's been kind of a crazy semester, and maybe it's okay to do this just every once in a while, just so we can recharge our batteries. So let's talk about this assignment. This is one of the 2 that you will upload to ePortfolio once you've completed your written reflection. This is one that you will do with one student. You're not going to be working again with a whole group of students unless you've not done your read aloud or your direct instruction yet. This is also an assignment that's done with a kindergarten student. We're not yet doing your case study assignments. This is just an early literacy to assess where a kindergarten student is in his or her literacy so far in the year. Last semester, we were able to pull from Miss Coyazzo's class, from Miss Odom's class, and Miss Porter's class. So some of you already are very familiar with some of those kids and might already know some about their literacy. I will allow, and if your teachers are okay with it, allow you to work with a kid in your class if you are in a kinder class. Even a first grade class, if you wanted to try it with one of the first graders, I would let you work on that because it's also good to see where their literacy is as well. But for this assignment, you're going to be conducting an assessment with this kid, and we're finding out where they are in their level of phonological awareness. There's a whole screening packet that I'm going to show you in just a little bit that you're going to use as your assessment packet. What you're going to do is complete the assessment with the kid, analyze the data that you received during the assessment, and then write a lesson or some lesson ideas as to how you would teach this child at their current level, and then give me a reflection on the whole experience. So there's quite a bit to do in this one lesson. This one is real specific in that when you are writing about your analysis and using the data from your assessment, your written work should be in I form and no opinion in your reflection, or I'm sorry, in your analysis. So let's say your student scored 90% on one of the assessments. You're not going to, in your evaluation of the assessment, say, I think this student did really well, and just say, think, believe, should have, and those sorts of things. For your analysis specifically, you're working in objective form, first person, which is where you use I and the student's name, but also just the facts. Then when you go into writing your reflection over the whole experience, I don't mind if you talk about what you believe or what you think should have happened or any opinion statements. It's just that the analysis must be data driven and not opinion driven. So we have to stick to the facts in the analysis, but the reflection can include your thoughts and feelings on how it went. So there is also a specific format, and I'm going to show you this in this assignment here. You see that this is called the ELA analysis template. You're going to have a title page that will include early literacy assessment, your name, and the first name of the student only. Please do not provide the last name of the student. And then the date that you conduct your assessment. In this case, that I think is the 23rd of March. You're going to do part 1 first, which is the phonological awareness screening in school packet that I will provide you. Your first sentence in the reflection, in the analysis of the data that you're collecting, you're going to write this sentence. Pat completed, or student's name, completed the phonological awareness screening in schools with blank % accuracy. That's a very succinct statement. It's all about the data. You'll see there's no opinion in that at all. Just very straightforward. Following that statement with that data point that you've just analyzed, I need you to talk about the strengths the student exhibited while doing the assessment, discussing the areas in which the student did well, and use data or examples from what happened to back up your statement. Note too that if you use examples like Pat replied that take rhymed with cake, make sure to separate out those things that you're using as examples so that it makes sense to the reader. You also are going to discuss the needs that this student has. Let's say they did really well with rhyming, but they didn't do well with segmenting. Maybe the needs for this particular student is that they need to work on sentence segmenting, and you would use some examples as to why you think that would be a need. Also, make sure to note how to appropriately identify examples when you're writing in your analysis. For each part of this assignment, you do include suggestions for instruction. I'm not asking that you write a full lesson plan, but I am asking that you research and find some kind of plan or activity or game or something that would increase this student's phonological awareness abilities. This one requires one recommendation for the phonological awareness screening. And note that this will be written in third person, so this is more like a reflection. And I strongly suggest that you use this website, fcrr.org, which is the Florida Center for Reading Research. And I will show you specifically why and how to get there in just a little bit. Your Tompkins book in the very back of the book also has activity ideas for certain things, as well as other textbooks that you might have used or seen in the past. If you use online resources, they must be vetted and professional websites. Something like Teachers Pay Teachers or Pinterest are not appropriate for this particular assignment. I believe that once you see fcrr.org, you'll be really happy with that and you'll be able to use it. I also want to note that if you do use anything that's outside of your own thinking, your own brain, cite your source for each of the activities that you find. Part 2 is letter recognition, where the student needs to be able to identify upper and lowercase letters and the letters themselves. In this case, they are looking at a list of the letters. You're pointing to the letters, and the student is to identify whether the letters are uppercase or lowercase and what the letter sounds are. So we do identification and letter sound correspondence. This piece of the packet is included in the packet, and it tells you exactly what you're supposed to say and do. One thing that I suggest is to take a sticky note and cut a little box outside from the center of this sticky note. And this will give you a little window to use when you're doing the letters one at a time, because if the students see this sheet that's covered in the alphabet, they're going to start not fully paying attention. This little window that you create targets that one letter, and that's all they're going to be able to see. And I'll bring this up again when I show you what this assignment or this assessment looks like. So your opening paragraph is going to begin with how well the student did with the identifying upper and lowercase letters. For example, Pat was able to recognize the lowercase letters of the alphabet with blank % accuracy. He was able to, etc. Same thing with the identifying letter sound correspondence. Pat was able to identify letter sound correspondence with blank accuracy. Remember, in this area, everything must be data and fact driven, no opinion in this at all. You will continue with the strengths and needs for the student in this particular part of the ELA. Don't forget your specific examples and noting things like underlining the letters that the student said or read. And again, there will be one recommendation for a specific activity to help the student with his or her letter recognition. This would be in third person, so you're using the him and her in this particular suggestions for instructions. The third part of the early literacy assessment assignment is the print concepts. And this is where we have the Whistle for Willie book available. You need the actual paper or hardbound copy of the book in your hand, so you will need to bring it with you on Monday the 23rd. If you don't already have a copy, please get one. This is where you will show the student the book, and you're asking them to do certain things to identify bits and parts of books and concept of print. So you do these things according to the assessment guidelines, and then you're writing up your analysis. Similar format for print concepts. One sentence to give your analysis on the data. For example, Pat was able to respond with blank % accuracy on the print concepts assignment. What did the student do really well in the strength section? What might they need to improve upon in the needs section? Remember, all fact and data driven, no opinion. Third person, one recommendation for a specific activity. And remember, third person is him and her. I think I mentioned earlier under the ELA that you could use opinion here. Do not. This is still part of your analysis, and third person just means that we're not saying I. We're using him and her, him or her in this case, to identify a suggestion for instruction for your student specifically. FCRR popped up all over the place because there is something on FCRR for almost all of these. And then once you've done your 3-part analysis, you've got a final overall reflection. This is where you can go all I believe, I wish, I should, all the thoughts and beliefs that you had while going through this assignment, you write in your reflection. It's what you experienced or learned. You're not writing more analysis of what the student did, but this is your response to your learning and doing this assignment. I will give you a copy of this on Monday so that you have it, and I mean Monday the 23rd, that morning when we get back to class. But I will also post this on Tracks in case you wanted to look at it beforehand. Now let's look at I'll show you that in just a second. Let's look at the packet. the assessment packet. This is the phonological awareness screening in schools that you will have a copy of to assess your students. I will also post this on Tracks now that I've digitized it. I suggest, because it's kind of fun to do this, is if you want to print it, it's a few pages long, but if you want to print it, you can practice and get a partner, somebody that you roommates with, or boyfriend, girlfriend, little brother, or somebody who you might can do this with, and just kind of practice the script. And that's the best part about these things, is that there's essentially a script that you follow. For example, our first page is about rhyming pairs. And if you remember, that's the first stage of the phonological awareness continuum, which is usually what students start learning first. Remember, too, that phonological awareness is all hearing or all sound. So we're not asking the students to read or write. We're just asking them to listen for things. So in this case, for rhyming pairs, what you're going to do is ask the student if two words rhyme. The student echoes each word and then decides if the two words rhyme. Here's what you, the examiner, will say. Listen to me. I am going to say two words. If the two words rhyme, I will say yes. If they do not rhyme, I will say no. You would then say hop, mop. Yes, those rhyme. Or red, lip. No, those do not rhyme. Your turn. I'm going to say two words. If the two words rhyme, you say yes. If they do not rhyme, say no. Cat, fat. Hopefully the student says, yes, this rhymes. If not, you would model it one more time and have the student try again. If the student continues to have difficulty, go ahead and move on to the actual assessment. You'll do the same sort of script for this next part. Listen to me. I'm going to say two words. If they rhyme, say yes. If they don't, say no. And then you would start with top and leg. If they say it correctly, give them 1 point. If they do not give you the correct answer, it's 0. At the end of the assessment, entirely don't worry about it right away or when you have the student there, but your data comes from the total of each assessment that you identify. So if your student gets 1 in each of these blanks, they get 5 out of 5. If they only get 1 out of the 5, then you would have 1 out of 5 here. The second piece is asking the student to generate rhyming words where they are going to say a word that rhymes with a word. Note here that nonsense words are acceptable. So if a student is just getting the sound at the end of the word, but it isn't really a word that they give you, that's okay. Here's your script, starting with the examiner. Listen to me. I'm going to say a word, and then I'm going to say a word that rhymes with that word. Cat, sat. Tip, sip. Your turn. What word rhymes with fun? Student does it. If incorrect, model one more time, have them try again. If the student continues to have difficulty, continue on to the assessment. Remember that this is not a teaching exercise. You are at no point during this assessment allowed to coach or teach the student about what they're supposed to be, what they're doing. This is an assessment only, and because you're teachers, that might be a little difficult for you. Just remember, you don't have time to teach them right now. We're trying to do this whole assessment in about 30 minutes. Plus, we want to know what they know at the moment. We don't want to know what they know after you teach them. So your list of words is here. You would say rat, and hopefully the student gives you a word that rhymes with rat. You can mark on this box or on this line over here what the student says. If they get it correct, mark a 1. If they get it incorrect, mark a 0. And then later you'll come back and total up your students' responses. Next part is segmenting syllables. I'm not going to read through all of these with you, but I want you to note that where it says examiner is where you do the talking. And there's a good reason to go over this before Monday the 23rd so that you are familiar with what is going to happen. For segmenting syllables, we're actually clapping, which can be confusing for some of the students because even later when we're doing another piece of the assessment, there's a different clap for a different reason, and the students might get a little confused. So be very clear with your directions on this one. So the students are going to clap for the syllables that they hear. And then they're going to practice onset rhyme. Again, here's where you begin. They're looking for the initial sound of a word. So here you're doing the sounds, like the P in the 2 slashes here is that P sound, P, P. So I'm just going to scroll through here so you can see these. Next is segmenting phonemes. Remember, that's kind of the hardest part for kids, is being able to segment specific sounds. Again, here's your examiner script and your example to do with the student. Continuing to mark a 1 for correct and 0 for incorrect. Your final summary of scores page would go here. This is where you're going to get your percentage of screening items correct. Here's your letter sound identification section. It's kind of lengthy, but what I want you to focus on are the procedures and what you would say to the student as you're going through the letter sound identification and letter identification and letter sound identification. Here's that use a masking card to cover rows below the row the child is looking at. That would be like a whole sheet of paper that maybe you fold over to have a defining line. I still think that a little window cut out of a little sticky note makes it a little bit easier. And that's because here's the list of what you're going to have your students do. And you just go down the list, follow the directions. But here's the page that they're looking at. And if you have them able to see this whole page, they're going to, especially if they have some learning disorder or some dyslexia or any other distraction kind of thing going on, they may not be able to pay careful attention. But if you're isolating this one letter and blocking out all the rest, they're only going to be able to identify that one thing that you've got them looking at. So it's a really good idea to create that window with sticky note or some other sheet or masking thing to cover up the ones you don't want them to look at. But here, what you'll do is show them the lowercase letter W, and you want to ask them, is this uppercase or lowercase? And here are your questions. Remember, can you tell me the name of this letter? What does the sound make? What's a word that starts with this letter? You can do that. That's letter recognition. And this is your concepts in print. Sorry, it's sideways. I failed to remember that it was landscape. But this is where we use Whistle for Willie. And in fact, even says Whistle for Willie on the sheet itself. The concept in print is specifically designed to see what a student knows about books specifically and about how we read. So for example, first thing you're going to do, and again, we're going to use this as sort of your script. You're going to show them the book, and then you're going to ask, what is this? And the student may say a book. They may give you the title of the book. There's a set of possible responses here. If your student says any of those, feel free to circle it. If they say something other than what's there, you've got an area here under child's response to note that down. Then you move to number 2, display the book. Ask the student, what do you do with it? If they say something that's already here, you can circle it. Otherwise, add what they say in the little box next door. Number 3, what's inside of the book? Number 4, show me a page in this book. Multiple questions, so you'll just need to go through the whole thing. The script part that you deal with is the administration. And then what you want to say to the student is under instruction, which I kind of don't like that because I just told you not to teach them, but you're not really teaching them. You're just asking them a bunch of questions. And more, all coming from Whistle for Willie. You do read the book to the student after you've done some identifying of how do you read from left to right, point to the first word in a sentence, and that sort of thing. And at the very end, the student is supposed to tell you about the story you just heard. And whatever the student says, you handwrite in this box right here. And once you have completed that portion, you want to analyze whether or not the student gave you the beginning and the setting of the story. If the student talked about the characters in the story, if the student gave you some sequencing of the main events of the story, if the student mentioned the problem that occurs in the story, and then, of course, the resolution of that problem or the end of the story. So this is a big assessment. This packet's fairly thick. The students get really excited to be able to work one-on-one with you guys, and they enjoy doing this. Some of the students have done this before, which is good because I have early part of the year data now, and then there'll be some middle, almost end of the year data. So I'm sure the kindergarten teachers would love it. What I want to say is that if you're in the middle of this assessment, you've tried every one of your tricks and strategies that you can to keep little Joey in his seat, but he won't stay and he's not doing what you need him to do. You have the freedom at any point in time to stop the assessment and then return the kid to his classroom. And I say his because it's just the overall his. I mean that in the royal we. This happens, and we're going to try to do it in the morning so that the kids are a little less active. But again, if you have tried everything you can think of to get the student to respond and there is absolutely zero cooperation, you can quit the assessment and take the kid back to his class. What happens then when you do your analysis and the data, you have to write about what happened and use the examples of what you tried to do to help the student calm down, whether it's brain breaks or jumping jacks or candy, whatever you think you have to use, you can certainly do that. And then, of course, the reflection is just going to reflect what happened and what you did to go ahead and make whatever you needed to do work. So that's the assignment guidelines and the assessment packet. You have to have a copy of Whistle for Willie with you on that Monday to do that concepts in print. This is what the cover of the book looks like. It's written by Ezra Jack Keats. If you do not have a copy on Monday, you will not be able to complete the assessment. Please make sure to have your own copy of Whistle for Willie available to you on that Monday morning. Oops. And then I mentioned the Florida Center for Reading Research as one of the resources for your suggestions for instruction activities. We've been using this website for a very long time, and it's invaluable, the activities resources that we've been able to obtain from this website. I'd like to do some research with the Florida Center for Reading Research, but no one's ever asked me. So here's what we do. You go to fcrr.org and click on resources. Once you get to the resources page, we're specifically looking for student center activities. You may want to look at VPK Learning Center activities, but I'm not asking you to do that yet for this activity. If you've got some extra time and you just want to explore, look at that one. It's pretty cool. But the Student Center activities is what will help you most for this activity. For what we're doing in this assignment, you'll focus on K through 1. And the cool thing about this is ta-da, we're talking about phonological awareness. There are activities broken out into the components of phonological awareness. If your student is struggling with rhyme, you can go to rhyme, and there is a list of activities that you can complete, create, print, and keep. Do whatever you want with these so that you have them available for your classroom and your students. What I like about these is this first page that you see is what it is and how to do it, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and create something on your own. You can use these bits of information on whichever activity you decide would be good for your student and write that up in your analysis paper. You do not have to print a copy of this as long as you identify the name of the activity. For example, this one is PA.001 rhyme or no rhyme. And then give me the data, the stuff that we need to be able to do this assignment or this activity. Then you've given me one bit of suggestion for instruction. So use this to inform your suggestions for instruction on your data analysis. I love this. I think it's great. When we normally have class and we're doing phonological awareness, I generally have you guys do centers, and I printed all of the centers activities from this website. So you'll likely see some of that stuff that we would have done tomorrow in class if we were actually going to meet in class. Once we move on to your case study stuff, you're going to be working with a student in your class, and some of these bits and pieces like phonics and fluency and vocabulary and comprehension will come in handy also when you're writing lesson plans for your case study. So bookmark this in your web browser so that you've got this readily available. I think it will be extremely helpful for you. I think that's it. That is our early literacy assessment assignment and what is expected, including the phonological awareness screening packet. Again, I'm going to post all of this information so that you have it available to you. Take a look at it sometime before Monday. What I want to do on that Monday we get back from break is I'll give you paper copies of the assessment packet so you have it to write on. So do not worry about printing it unless you print it to practice ahead of time. But I want us to practice in class before I send you out into the lunchroom or the library or wherever you end up going with your kid to do the assessment. So we'll take a few minutes just to kind of go over it together, and I can answer some questions, and then I will send you out to match you up with a kid, and then you go on and take care of your assignment. Again, I'm not traveling over the weekend, so if you need me, you can text me or send an email. I will be getting in touch if you need me. Otherwise, everybody have a great break, and I will see you in just over a week. Thanks.